and they were known for bringing a lot of innovation to those licensed products at the products. They changed dolls or build dolls. So in 1964, when Hasbro brought out their Action Man or their G.I. Joe line, Palitoy were very quick to pick up the license in 1965 and to bring a doll for boys into their portfolio of products. And in typical fashion to everything else that they did, they would bring a lot of they would eventually put their own stamp on G.I. Joe, as they call it, Action Man. So they released the original G.I. Joe lineup initially. Paddy was reminding me there that the demand was so high they had to bring in extra stock from the USA.
So you'll find actually there's a lot of the Palitoy released Action Man, obviously Action Man packaging. Because it was so successful, they ended up bringing actually on fairly G.I. Joe product as well, and just stuck stickers on top of Hasbro and G.I. Joe. So you'll quite often find re-stickered Hasbro product.
Why am I going backwards?
The wrong side.
Right side.
There we go. There you're back.
Technical problems. So it didn't take long though before Palitoy began to kind of make it their own. So they brought their own kind of uniforms in there. They started to design their own accessories. This particular set here was designed by Bob McLeod and his at the time boss Bill Pugh.
So that's the Arctic Explorer set.
The Arctic Explorer set, and of course some of the innovations that you guys already know is the gripping hand, which is Bob McLeod's hand. Bob will tell you all about that being called to the Skeletron stand over the course of the weekend. Palitoy also introduced the blocks here. And of course the sharpshooter head, which allowed for Action Man set to be held back in place for sharpshooter poses. And ultimately, Palitoy would completely redesign the entire body of the doll, taking out all the metal parts and having a plastic model.
When we were doing spoke to the tooling manager and he said that actually he thought Hasbro were terrible at tooling toys. He said they thought Palitoy was better at it. Because Palitoy, Hasbro would use multiple tools to make Action Man, and Palitoy found a way to engineer one tool to the entire Action Man body. So that made it obviously the process simpler. So he was very much of amateurs. Toys that they are.
So throughout the 1970s then, when we saw maybe decline in sales for G.I. Joe in North America, in the UK, Action Man was thriving, and it would obviously go on to become like toy of the decade. It's such a popular toy. So that success that Action Man had meant that a lot of kind of licensed royalties making their way back across the Atlantic to Hasbro. So they were doing pretty okay in the grand scheme of things. And in fact, Action Man was so popular that when Kenner came to Palitoy and asked them to take the Star Wars license, they initially said, no, we don't need Star Wars. We've got Action Man.
Yeah, we've got the best toys toy world. Why do we need Star Wars?
So, but ultimately, what would happen is that by 1980, both Palitoy and Hasbro they had to recognise the trend in the market moving towards the 300 quality scale. So, what was happened on both sides of the Atlantic, those companies began to plan their own 3/4 inch lines to keep Star Wars with the model of Star Wars success. I'm going to let Paddy talk a little bit about what happened next.
Right, so here we have concept sketches for an updating of Action Man after Star Wars hit, or suddenly sci-fi was all the rage, and Action Man was still a military adventurer, sportsman, kind of toy line. So these are Greg Hughes' sketches, I believe,
Yes.
or updated Action Man. Basically, set Action Man in the far distant future of 2020. Those initial concepts from Greg Hughes' Action Man line, taken by ArmaGEEKdon, downsized to be first wave of Action Force. And you see here it's a very kind of sci-fi vibe again to all these character designs that and what happened then eventually was Bob's boss came and told him, we don't want this modern stuff. We want it simple, straightforward. What you're going to do is you're going to replicate the 12 most popular action man dolls that we sell and size to create for scale. So you see here, it's a mixture. This last row here has a couple of the sci-fi kind of themed characters there at the end, but mainly it's back to the basics. You have here Pixie Diver, Desert Rat, German Stormtrooper, various British characters that top selling action toys. So it became the first wave of force. And along with those kind of toys, you got some new vehicles. Initially, like the thought was that, we've just downsized existing action man vehicles. It's actually in terms of 12-inch scale size. The decision was made to go and design up new vehicles for that. These were done by design for Raffle Hope, for London design for designers. They did a lot of stuff for Paddy. This is the concept sketch for five. As well. So you see, these are actually quite close to what was eventually released, but there's a couple of noticeable changes. Those prongs are by
sleeves, yeah.
sleeves or something. Final color. And then Z for live. You see, it was supposed to be mounted missile launcher as well. That's a new item. But what was carried over is flipped up. But these are actually really nice science kits.
Beautiful marker.
No, you're taking back this time. Here.
Star Wars.
There. So this is the first series of you might see there kind of towards the right hand side, the black and red. That was one of Bob's kind of science fiction designs that eventually made negative design. Second series one. But you see there, it's kind of a bizarre mixture of styles of what they're going for. You have World War II figures, you have German Stormtrooper, the parachutist. You've got science fiction. You've got what could probably be classed as so it's kind of a weird, it's like for that first year. And it just really, the one thing I always found was very interesting is the aesthetic of the figures doesn't really match the aesthetic of the vehicles. The vehicles are all very futuristic, as if they're from for a toy line. But why is a World War II German Stormtrooper driving futuristic? Laser
It's just worth saying that these are not the finished toys that were released. These are the pre-production samples made up out of resin and die cast. So on Bob is on the Skeleton stand today with a few of these figures on display. The sequel that didn't make the point first. UN Trooper, the top left corner. That's on display in the Skeleton stand at the moment.
So this is the launch for the new series. Of course, you can thank Bob for giving us a bunch of his slides. So, documented a lot of this areas action forces lineup. So this is taken from where he'll tell me which one it is. I don't right launching the series. So there you see various mock-ups of toys, vehicles. These are all obviously prototyping. So there's some of the pictures there of all the different sounds. Let's get now, you guys will know these people. Are you familiar with G.I. Joe? So you will know these guys as basically the first year of the G.I. Joe. You have your Jack Cannon, your Jump, Black is in there too, MMS. So Hasbro and Palatoy obviously had an existing relationship with G.I. Joe partnership. When it came time for both companies were developing these things currently, and they launched, I believe, Palatoy released Palatoy showed off Action Force. Yes, Hasbro showed off G.I. Joe. So that's how close they were in terms of and we're being the same because they have existing relationship with Hasbro, Palatoy were able to obtain samples of the product. They were able to obtain tooling on the Hasbro for 6 weeks at a time. So yeah.
So you all know this guy here, Kurt Bazzica.
Yes.
We got a chance to interview Kurt for our book Total Action Force Volume 2. It's now completely sold out. Sold a last copy yesterday here. But Kurt was very gracious with his time when we interviewed him. He explained to us that even before Hasbro released G.I. Joe Blue American Hero, they knew they wanted to take it to international markets. And they would have been very much aware of how successful Palatoy had been with G.I. Joe 12-inch version. So they would have regarded Palatoy as very important clients. You know, all those license fees that we talked about earlier in the 1970s, Hasbro didn't get that. So when they had a chance to, when they saw what Palatoy was doing with their Creed support line, they immediately reached out. Like within weeks of the scope, because they immediately reached out and asked if they could take a license for G.I. Joe. And of course, Palatoy, you know, we know that they did. So in a very short time after the release of Action Force, Palatoy almost immediately see what they could do to freshen it up and might be developers and integrate some of that Hasbro product. So Palatoy would have been interested in taking the molds, but they didn't want to bring any of the G.I. Joe mythology. They wanted to keep it very much. What we see on the slide here is a couple of early sketches by Bob of how they might reimagine this new Action Force. And again, you see this kind of science fiction kind of slant or approach from the images. Very kind of dynamic colorways, even styling on uniforms and headsets and things like that. We actually can see a logo on their chests, which will become the Space Force logo. That Space Force. But again, staying in that kind of early science fiction sort of headspace, you can see some of these initial concepts that were mocked up for various Action Force teams. And you can see some of the G.I. Joe vehicles integrated there. And of course, the G.I. Joe vehicles need G.I. Joe figures to act as drivers, because if you ever try putting a Palatoy 5POA figure into the driver's seat of the van, you're going to have to get a new van. And of course, they wanted to develop an enemy faction to battle against Action Force. So here we see the concept of very concept of shadows. When you take a look at Baron Armblow down there, he's got a very different kind of look to him. Almost like a big the merciless with the big hood, the cape, and the green skin and the red eyes. But of course, that fantasy type approach, what it made its way into Series 2 of Action Force, as we call it, they had to put in some a little bit more traditional military from Z Force and SAS Force to sort of balance it up. So you can see here, this is what would become Action Force Series 2. There's still some prototype stuff in here, but we've got more kind of fantasy stuff over here on the left. crossing the line, something a bit more recognizable as modern military. Still going backwards. It's gone into reverse again.
Well, actually, leave it on slide with the second.
Just look at that.
So yeah, you obviously will recognize most of these toys here, or many of these. SES Panther being the van, the battle tank, Bash, MMS, being the MMS with a better worse. I think the big innovation Alpha did, those Hasbro moments, is that they put much more paint apps, and also to make sure the colors on the starting list. That first, with the assortment on G.I. Joe, everything is passed. It's very little paint deco apps on the toys, G.I. Joe toys, whereas pallet toy, it's more vibrant, pop shells, put in different paint apps, they put in sticker sheets. For example, with the Panther, there's an entirely different sticker sheet that gives the interior of the van. Lots of dials, lots of radio set, things like that. Hopefully, it brings more variety of potential.
You look at again, thinking about pallet toys and innovation. We've discovered some nice concept material that hasn't been seen previously. So Paddy's going to talk you through some of these pieces from the concept halls.
So yeah, Bob Regan said gave us a bunch of slides. We spent about a day going through, those little slides that are on a carousel. You click them and then they flip around.
Yeah.
Myself and Brian spent an entire day in the window with his garbage. What is this? Is this an action man? Is that a dressy doll? And we found a handful of slides, one of the concept mock-ups or different action force toys that never been. So if you're an animal support collector, you might recognize the base vehicle here. It's called a satellite defense space force vehicle. And here it is in Red Shadows deck. It's a Red Shadows vehicle. Well, this one is interesting. So this, we don't know what this is. And if anybody has an idea, please let us know. So it's clearly an armor carrier, but I can't tell from what toy line it's from. And it uses at least one piece of a TIE fighter there on the top. You see the hatch.
Yeah.
That's actually a TIE fighter hatch. So obviously it's been bashed from something else. Maybe a model kit or something. On the correct scale, they were just trying to figure out what finding for.
That's Stuart's looking at it.
That's Stuart's looking at it very closely. Yeah, so obviously Palatoy did use Star Wars parts on other action toys. Underneath the satellite defense has a thruster that's actually the satellite dish for the phone. They obviously just cast it and use it as part of it. Other toys as well, Star Wars parts. This will interest you guys. It's another reprint bag. We obviously got it as the SAS Hall in Action Force in SAS Force. Here's a version of it. Z Force. That's Steeler, and that's Steeler piloting. Yeah. So we don't know what that landing pad is. I thought it might be a jump, but it's not the right size. Maybe it's something again to flashed time, just to develop that way. And there you can see they built an all-new tank as a tow to bring the landing pad. So the landing pad actually has wheels. They flashed mini tank, and like the side looks to be the size of an armadillo, but it's not. But it uses again parts from satellite defense and then threads that I can't recognize to make it into a center. It seems to be the same size. It's not. So if anybody has any clues what that is, ArmaGEEKdon is Star Wars.
Write your answers on the postcards. Send them to But these these are good examples of kind of palette toy design innovation. They were taking certain some inspiration from what Hasbro did in G.I. Joe. They were happy to integrate that into the line. They obviously developed the breathing life into Action Force. But you can see it's a deliberate design attempt here to see, well, what can we do to make it a look, to put our own stamp on it. And this is a typical retail space once Action Force got that refresh and revamp. It hit toy stores. There was a lot of promotion around this kind of invented line. See Barn, nice Barn with standee over here. And there was even in-store promotions where characters would dress up as Baron Armaged and meet the kids that were coming into the shops. Sounds a little bit kind of creepy.
Did it scare them?
We spoke to the PR manager, Caroline Hayton.
Yes.
She mentioned that. So the PR firm had next to Lucasfilm, and when they were promoting Star Wars toys, they were able to contact Lucasfilm and get actual screen-worn Sam Stormtrooper outfit, Darth Vader's outfit, to do these store appearances. And a number of store appearances, they actually got Dave Prowse, Darth Vader, to show up and turn up at store appearances. So you actually had the actual Darth Vader wearing actual costume for the PR events in toy shops in the UK.
What was he? Armaged too.
Maybe it was Baron Armaged too. She did say they were actually, after using the Lucasfilm costumes from Star Wars, they were really disappointed with the Baron Armaged costume. The costume did a good job. They particularly thought they had. So it's just interesting. And if you see the prices there, get yourself $3.99 for a vehicle, $6.99 for an SAS.
God, that's cheap.
You move the decimal point like one space over. That's
Yeah.
What's next? Okay, so the Rival Final Action Force. So this is part one beneath the comic. So one of the big successes of Action Force was the comic tie-in. And again, it's no secret that Palatoy in their 1983 trade catalog showed that they had a three-pronged approach to their marketing. They would have TV commercials, they would have their fan club, and they would have a comic tie-in. So that this was established very, very early on.
a couple of things on TV commercials. There's only 2 television stations in the UK. One is for our commercials. So the BBC obviously has never had commercials. That most of the television stations, radio stations at the time. So they could only really use what was called ITV, that's classic stations, for their TV commercials. The other problem Carol mentioned to us in her small reason was that there was very little branded kids program at the time because the good children's program was seems to have commercials. Trash television children's program like TV. And they didn't want to be associated with bad television. So they were very picky about where they placed those toy commercials at the time. She also mentioned that the fan club, the Action Force fan club, they had 20,000 members.
Wow.
It's actually pretty good for the size of its population. That's great for any business. You've got basically a list of 20,000 you're sending stuff into.
So in terms of the comic tie-in, you have to if we just take a little look back and say when Palatoy were doing with Action Man, they would use a lot of content marketing. From annuals, it's an Action Man annual, there was Action Man novels, which also interestingly integrated Action Man and his bully G.I. Joe. Featured in those.
Cool.
Flanagan is Mike Brogan is the author. And of course, the being sticker books where the stickers acted like comic books within the pages. Once you completed the stickers, you had the story. So Palatoy were no strangers to having comic style content to promote their toys. And of course, in pack, they would have these little one-page comic strips. Here's an Action Man comic strip, which is an Action Man helicopter. And the big one here on the right is the AF5 multi vehicle. Again, a one-pager little comic adventure, which some of the characters against the vehicle. Both of these were illustrated by Greg Hughes, the Palatoy designer, which we mentioned. So there were no strangers to having this kind of comic style content to promote their toys. But of course, if you look at what Hasbro did with G.I. Joe, which was massive success. Comic tie-in really helped boost the success of G.I. Joe in America. So you might think, well, maybe Palatine wants to model that a little bit, and you couldn't really blame that because the first publisher that wanted to tie John signed up with was Marvel UK. So Marvel USA's counterpart. What we can see here is that they've got as far as doing a very good sketch for a potential action force cover. Character sketch for Baron Arnold, and both of these done by John Higgins.
John Higgins is been probably certainly read.
I can see that Baron Arnold concept sketch is inspired by the prototype Baron Arnold. So this shows you what early it was in the they were developing this kind of comic tie-in before they even released Action Force
And
Series 2.
Alan Moore was in quite common.
Yes.
And Joe. Stuff. It would be very funny if that in his first one.
But if we look back at Palatine, they did have a track record of doing very dynamic ads or Star Wars toys with Marvel UK. So these are often featured in the Star Wars Weekly comic. And these are illustrated by Bolan's, again, another superstar artist. Got his break, very early on. So I suppose what it shows is that Palatine had enough of a track record to maybe come to the decision on its own to the comic tie-in, rather than just simply talk about Hasbro did. So we don't know for sure if they deliberately want them or not. But we're saying, like I said, it's a case for one side and a case for the other side. But ultimately, they did not go with Marvel UK. And the reason for that was a couple of reasons. But one of them is that the PR company that worked with Palatine, they had staff which were ex-Leeway publications or IPC magazines. Legal name, Leeway was its training name. So it's likely that they were kind of influenced by the PR company to look at a different culture. And one of the reasons why they might look at Leeway, that it had a whole portfolio of comics aimed at the boys market that would have had sales 20,000 issues per week. So massive comic sales. They had a fantastic distribution network. And this particular chart over here shows the sales figures for Battle. Battle was kind of IPC's war comic. And in the late 70s, we can see it up there at 120k copies per week. And over the course of a few years, Batman started to get a decline in sales, where it's down just in the low 70s by 1983. And of course, you can see that highlighted on the screen there. And it's at that point that IPC saw an opportunity to bring this licensed property into their flagship war comic to maybe revitalize it. See where Action Force joins 3, sales figures start to creep up again. So it's one thing to kind of to get that sort of licensed, get that licensed property, which is a great win for IPC or Leeway. They need to now assemble an amazing team to bring this Action Force universe.
Just on that terrifying.
I'm going to hit backwards.
Don't hit backwards because it's true. But you notice, Batman after the dip, and then Action Force joins and it creeps up, and there's another dip. Starts with another dip is when Baron Arnold. So really fans like that change. It started to lead which is soon as Iron.
We don't have stats for after that, so it's maybe they've gone back up again or not. But
Maybe the kids saw the light, because man was better. But, certainly the initial reaction was fast.
so we want to talk about the team here, and first we want to spotlight that first writer that IPC put on the case, a guy called Jerry Day. We love Jerry. We're going to tell you a little bit about him, but we love him so much we have to make a little introductory video for him. Come on, a round of applause for Jerry Finning Day, guys. Come on. And here he is here today. This is Jerry Finning Day. He is our Larry Hannah. I know you guys may not know Jerry or be familiar with his work over here in America, but in the UK and Ireland, he's a really big deal. And in that little video intro, we get to see some of the characters that he created. He created some classic World War II characters, World War II stories, but he also worked in the science fiction space as well. And he is himself a former paratrooper. So he was able to bring some of his own military experience into his kind of stories to give them maybe a bit more of an authenticity that some of his contemporaries weren't themselves not able to bring stories. He's a great ideas guy, a great characters guy. And if you ever get a chance to check out Jerry, they are highly recommended look for. He's got a phenomenal track record in comics. And we're going to talk a little bit more about him later on. Talk about some future books that have coming out. But Jerry didn't work obviously alone. With Jerry, there were other writers and artists. So we have on the art side, we have Jim Watson, and a very gritty, kind of painterly, artistic style, which really suited the graphic violence of the Action Force stories.
I do think we need to emphasize that the stories are graphically violent. You guys waited like 110 years to get lost with you. That's a hyperbole with everybody. There's Action Force guys dropping like flies from paper. There are red shadows getting shot, stashed, garroted, thrown off buildings, drowned. It's a rough comic actually. You just don't like, even now I'm like, how are they selling this to kids? How is this a good idea to market this toy line with people being shot in the head?
Superstar artist on the team is Cam Kennedy. And you'll be familiar with Cam Kennedy over here, his work on Star Wars Dark Empire. So he was a really big name to bring to the art team. And of course, they were joined by seasoned veteran John Cooper, who was, again, sort of mainstays for British comics. And many other artists. We don't have enough space in the slide to fit them all in. But my personal favorite, Banjo Brothers, who did an amazing job bringing the action.
The first thing I always like, he's like one of the best. Market, I don't know how to do this, but like it's him and Ian Kennedy for like drawing airplanes.
Yeah, he had a lot of reference material and stuff that he drew from to make sure it's
here. So Battle Action Force, our Action Force made its debut in Battle in June 1983, exactly 1 year after its comic debut. The first story was serialized in 4 parts in the weekly comic, and that was followed up by 5 mini comics, which were released fortnightly over the summer of 1983. And a follow-on story from the story that was in the weekly comic. And just here's an example of some of the comic art at the time. You can see the space station over here on the right. It's actually based on a point-of-sale piece that was made to promote the toys in store. So that's not actually a space station that was for sale. That was something that the design team tool in Palatoy to put in shop windows. And then in October 1983, Battle rebranded as Battle Action Force, and the Action Force was given basically half of the comic was given over to Action Force stories. And here's a nice little point-of-sale piece that was developed at the time in store. So these comics, in certain locations, they were available free. They weren't free everywhere, but were basically pick up a free copy of Battle Action Force. So what we love about that comic is that it would take the toys and that was kind of those foil cards, which had a little bit of information about the characters, but it really breathed new life into Action Force. And this amazing team of writers, an amazing team of artists took the Action Force universe to a whole brand new level. And just to give a little taster for that, we're going to do 2 character cases. We're going to look at Red Razor and we're going to look at Red Jackal, just to give a quick example. So here's a Red Razor, and if we look at his file card, it tells us that he is a terrorist, a student of laser technology and was seduced by Baron Armbrust to join the Red Shadows. And that's all it tells you.
And you know, he was already a terrorist, so he probably didn't need much seduction.
But Jerry Philly Day decided to take a bit of a different approach. So while he does factor in all that kind of laser science in there, Red Laser is also an expert in Japanese martial weaponry. So we often see him, as well as using his kind of laser exterminator to wreak havoc on Action Force, he uses his katana, his shuriken, and his yugi on the Japanese longbow. So it just kind of it shows how the creative team didn't just rigidly stick to the file cards. They gave themselves a broader canvas kind of to play with the characters in the universe. Similarly with Jackal, again, we have this, you know, some people would sometimes think he's just Destro in another alias for Destro, but really, this guy is not a guy in a mask. He is a cyborg, an Action Force driver who's ambushed, critically wounded, and then bionically re-engineered, kind of like RoboCop. And Jerry Philly Day writes him as a Latvian character. So you just imagine with that Eastern European accent, and you start thinking of Terminator. So think about RoboCop meets Terminator, cold blooded ruthless killer. That's Red Jackal is. And that's all he is. There's no kind of frills in the sky. He's just
The weapon.
just a weapon. This is some of the bionic surgery that's taking place on over here in the left. And ironically, or incidentally, Red Laser performed some of the bionic surgery on it. So those two characters have a direct connection.
And you can see here, he's using the hyena to murder a bunch of politicians. It don't ever happen in G.I. Joe.
Do it, Jack. We'll make the people happy.
Exactly. Make us happy. We shouldn't go down with politicians. But again, it's an example of this is supposed to be for kids.
So, and of course, as some of you may know, anyone's come by our table this weekend or paying attention on social media, Battle Action Force is making a return after 40 years. So I give that a round of applause. So here's a little video to show you all about it. So, Toll Toy Books has secured license with Rebellion, where the owners of the Action Force artwork and scripts to re-release the 1983-1984 series of stories in three deluxe, oversized hardback volumes. And if you want to talk more about that with us, we're going to have a bit of Q&A, and of course, at our table down below, and we will talk Action Force all day with you guys. Right now, we've got an early bird bundle deal. So if you pre-order, you get 3 books for the price of 2. And that QR code up there, if you take a photograph of that QR code will take you to the pre-order page. By the way. So guys, we are happy to open it up to any questions you might have about Action Force, toys or comics. Or the reprints, yes.
I'll start with a question. So often with like pre-orders and stuff, it's a little bit of a gamble. Might not see them for a few years, particularly with, you know, complex toys and tooling and stuff. So if you were to pre-order these, you know, today, how long would you expect to wait before you actually have it in your hand?
Well, these are going to prints in around 2 months. So our timeline is that we're going to have hard copies in hand by early December. And we're going to have our shipments split between Europe and North America. So half of our products are going to go to North America, and Skeletron, who are big stakeholders in this project, are going to fulfill all of the North American orders through their own distribution pipeline. So what that means is that if you order all 3 books, which is about £15, it's about the same weight as Carson's big G.I. Joe book. Yeah, wait.
But 3 volumes combined, there is comparison.
So we can ship in North America for it's around $28 roughly. I'm trying to convert it from euro in my head here, so I'll probably get by $1 or 2, but it's not too far off that. And then of course from the United Kingdom side, all those orders will be handled by our fulfillment company based in Ireland, so we can get the UK orders out. But yeah, that's so coming back to your question, Mark. Yeah, so definitely the end of this year we'll have physical stock in hand. It does take longer to get our books to the US. So they could be a couple of weeks after our European pre-orders get shipped. But it wouldn't be too far along. Jason?
If we're brokering pre-order again, we always want to. Will these be available for Diamond or anything like that after the pre-order? Once, also for people who are here who may not know or miss this deal.
So the books are available to order individually. But you mentioned Diamond there, so yes, it will be going to the Diamond previews in October. So if you can't afford to get the books now, you can contact your local bookseller or comic store.
Tim's right there. Talk to Tim. Yes, John.
And ask them to place the orders for Diamonds. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to ask who your favorite Action Force characters and why. And if you can pick a favorite force.
Well, when I was growing up as a kid, Z-Force was my favorite, and Captain Grant Campbell, codename Skip, he was my favorite character. I got him right there.
Right.
So, but I find now, as kind of an older guy, reading the comics or rereading the comics, I really love 2 characters in SAS Force, Stakeout and Quickfire, who are like polar opposites of each other. Quickfire is a very, very serious kind of ex-German Special Forces commando, and Stakeout is this clown, like a messer, who loves rubbing people up the wrong way. And Jerry Finley places these characters in a lot of scenarios together where they just rub off each other and creates this kind of great kind of character dynamic.
I love Baron First Action Force annual, there's a story where obviously Ironwood gets captured by Action Force. And the Black Major saves him by disguising himself as an Action Force pilot. He shoots the rest of the crew as the taking Baron in a helicopter. Black Major lands the helicopter and says, "Look, it's me, it's Black Major." And Baron Ironwood smacks him across the face. It's like, "I didn't order you to do this. I didn't need your help to get rescued." So, yeah, I like it. Like me.
No, you're not.
Tim.
These books reprint covers for their pages in color, and so are those included? Are they including these colors?
Yeah, so it's going to be as faithful to the original comics as possible. So where color was used in the original comics, that will be in our books. And when they're black and white, you'll have black and white. It's kind of like Marvel comics, or you get that kind of mix of kind of black and white color in just a single issue. But again, in terms of covers gallery, yes, there will be a covers gallery in those books. It won't be a complete covers gallery, covers specific to the stories featured in each volume. So we want to connect the content to the stories in each volume as much as possible. Dave?
The continuity of the stories, you're not going with the original continuity that they were printed as release. You're doing the complete story in continuity, and then the next story continuity, and the next story, and so it's going to be broken up into like maybe you'll have 4 parts, and then maybe a special, then a couple parts, then another special, whatever, because the continuity, chronological continuity.
Yeah, chronological continuity, exactly. So we're grouping the stories together, like I said, they were serialized. We take each individual weekly part of the story, group it together so you can read it in one piece. And then the story after that is what comes next in the chronology. Remember, the writing team on this was only 3 guys, mostly Jerry Day. He was supported by Scott Woodall and James Davidson. So the chronology is very solid. You would never see Paranormal in a Jerry Day story and then begin to crop up at the same time in the same issue in another Action Force story. They kept the characters kind of nice and separated from the universe so that they weren't contradicting each other.
Very good.
Yes.
A little bit about the football thing that they just had in the 4-year-old newspaper.
Well, you have to treat the subject matter very sensitively. You don't want to risk in relation to the physical copy. So that newsprint, just the nature of the material, degrades over time. Even if you like try to look after it, it will degrade anyway. But also the printing process. Those pages would have a lot of ink rub. So when the comic was kind of folded, the ink might still be wet in some cases, not in every issue, and you might get ink roll from one page onto the other. That all has to be a digital process. So it takes a lot of time, it is very meticulous. There are no shortcuts. It has to be done right. And of course, I'm coming at it from a place of reverence for that artwork. I love those artists. The artwork in those comics means a lot to me. It's got an emotional kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Nostalgia, yes, nostalgia kind of connection to it. So it is kind of, we say that the artwork is lovingly restored, and it really is. But it's a slow, methodical, meticulous process. So where we're at in terms of our production timeline, where we're at with that is that volumes 1 and 2, all that work is done in terms of touching volume. The third volume is in progress. So once that's complete, which we're anticipating is going to be about 6 to 8 weeks, it's going to go into print, and then we go through a series of printing proofs to make sure that the image and color reproduction is just as we want it to be, and then we sign off, and then the books will go on at that stage.
Yeah, so we're using digital rebellions regular printer. So if I guys buy spread maybe for comics, it'll be the same quality. They print all their comics in Latvia. Where Rachel from?
More after that.
Well, we'll see how this goes. So right now, we're just focusing on these 3 volumes here. If this goes well, then it's certainly an opportunity to look at additional volumes.
Yeah, so what this covers is almost all of the red shadows stuff. So anything for Farmer the villain, these 3 volumes, and then obviously spoken. So
Out there.
so we would, yeah, this is the stuff that you obviously would have seen here. The stuff after you comes forward, the volume 4 storyline, which is where Farmer comes from. But that's kind of where the cutoff is in terms of where volume 3 ends. It's pretty complete in terms of red shadow stories.
But just to add to what Paddy said there too, that there are a lot of origin stories in the Action Force era, in this era. The origin stories won't be included in these volumes. This focuses on the main storyline, the emergence of the Red Shadows, and how Action Force kind of battled against them prior to change over to Cobra Commander. So the origin stories, we've been observing them for a later volume.
And you should also, you didn't mention the story about that. So as you're talking about the process, so Brian was scanning these obviously from his original comics. And some of them you bought elsewhere. And you were telling me the story where some kid would have won the comic for you and drawn his own word with him, and someone said bollocks. So Brian had cleaned that up.
Oh, man. Oh, what?
And
That's bad, isn't it?
the other page, Brian had cleaned up the mirror image of the word bollocks.
Oh yeah, and that sometimes boobs are drawn on. It's not part of the original artwork. It's not getting into the book.
Oh, man.
We could have like a bloopers kind of reel at the end and just show what happened.
I think it's the box cup.
That's good.
So,
This man's got another question.
So, just a kind of basic thing, if you had to pick a favorite action force story, what is it?
Operation Claymore.
Oh, that's a great story.
The SAS being hunted down by the Red Shadows in Scotland.
That's a great story. There's lots of great stories. My favorite story in this collection would be Assault on Atoll Z. So if you guys have seen Assault on Precinct 13, imagine that set in the South Pacific. And it's probably one of the most intense kind of battles between Action Force and the Red Shadows. It's just one massive battle, serialized over, I think it's 6 or 8 issues. It's a great one. But my favorite Action Force story of all time is Operation Stubborn, where the SAS are being hunted by Firefly in somewhere in this kind of mountain range in Arabia. It's a nail biter of the story. They're just the prey, and Firefly is the hunter.
Okay, we're at time, I think. So unless there's one more question, we can probably do it. Or not, so we wrap up. Yeah, we're going to wrap it up. We got time?
Yeah, we got another 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah. Is there any ancillary material besides the covers that is going to be included in these collections, like introductions and things like that?
Thanks for setting that up for us. Yes, Jerry Finney is writing the introduction to the first volume. He sent that to us a couple of weeks ago, so we're going to include that.
Cool.
He actually has extremely fond memories of working on Action Force. I was saying it to speak to Bob Redden earlier on. He mentioned that Bob was like, well, you know, they've changed my storylines. Bob obviously had his own ideas for what those characters, but he mentioned particularly Kraken. Bob's idea for Kraken was that the issue of Baron Ironclad, Baron War Turtles. Jerry Finney David wanted to write the Kraken. Only if there's one Action Force story in it. He has, as the Red Shadows, just discovered a Kraken. Frozen in ice. And Bob was like, he didn't do what I told him to do at all.
Yes, to Jerry, he said Jerry's the most of these stories here are by Jerry. So he's the author of Jerry Day, and then the corresponding artist it has the most kind of pages per volume. It's called as the headline artist, but there are multiple contributors into those various stories. But Jerry's writing the introduction for volume 1, and then James Tomlinson is kind of a supporting writer, is writing the introduction for volume 2. So we're really delighted to get both of those kind of Action Force alumni to contribute to these particular volumes. But the other material that will be included includes the combat reports that were featured in the comics and the character data files. They will be featured in the books also.
Cool. Very good. Thank you.
No?
Any other questions?
Maybe you can tell us what we can see if we come down to your table to find out more.
Yeah. It's marketing us than we are. So at our table, we have at the table, guys, see the 3 digital mock-ups here. We have physical mock-ups of those books at the table. So if you come down and visit us, you can pick them up, get a sense for how weighty they are, the physical size of them. And then if you look inside, well, we don't have any printed pages inside them. Keep the material, the binding, all of that is active to your conclusion fonts and video. So you can check that. That's worth checking it out because it gives you a sense of the scale of these books.
You also have a couple of brief copies.
Yes.
Show the scan.
So we just bound up, some soft copy versions of 2 of the volumes, so you can see the quality of the retouching, which we're really happy with, and the feedback has been fantastic for people from there to see those. And of course, other things at our table, we have some of our own copies of Total Action Force: The Battle Years. So if you haven't already picked up that book, that dives into the history of Action Force, both the toys and the comics. So imagine a lot more detail than what you get in this particular panel, and loads of beautiful visuals to support that. Thank you. And anyone who buys a copy of the book gets some lovely free swag. So we've got some free prints to give away, free bookmarks, and free badges.
Can I ask a completely self-serving question as well? If people wanted to see the original comics,
We've got them on our table, courtesy of this man.
Mark said it's been grown up action force to our table.
Wow, I'm gonna
All
go.
155 issues.
Whoa.
And it's taken offers.
You are? Hmm. May have to
Yes.
do that.
I'm sorry, it's gonna be a bit ignorant because I'm not an expert on this. I'm, very much American G.I. Joe. But I'm aware of, like, I've read a lot of the kind of long format file cards that would be online available of many of the characters. And my understanding was that Trent became kind of Hawk's counterpart in England, and that Flint was kind of the team leader, but David Fairborn as opposed to Bash Fairborn. Is that sort of continuity of what I understand to be Action Force? Is that in these volumes, or would that be?
So there's two action force comics. They're in the big big comics, I think, where which lasted from remind me 386.
386.
And then when Palatine went out of business, Hasbro took on the trademark and released a Real American Hero product, almost unchanged in the UK from 87. And they launched a new comic, Action Force Weekly. It was done by UK, so different artists, different writers. And in those comics, Flint is the head of the team. Flint is the dude and Trent's the Hulk. And it's totally separate contribution.
It's completely separate. So
Yeah.
Skip and these guys.
None of these guys in this. No red shadows, no Flint Force. It is an action force team that is comprised of characters. It just came over and they changed certain names, certain backgrounds. So
Yeah.
obviously it was English.
The SAS guy.
Yeah, and they have to actually, Flint's bio, they have to specifically explain away why is US Army belt. It's like, oh, why does this British guy have US Army belt? And it's given to him because he was so good.
You can enter our table after this panel, and we'll talk loads about Marvel.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to spend
We
it.
even have some US comic sales, so that's okay. Courtesy of.
All right, thank you again, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Hope you enjoyed that.
Awesome.